Welcome to the Economic Times Digital Payments Forum. Partnered with MasterCard, this initiative looks at how digitization and innovation will open the payments industry to new opportunities and push the country's financial inclusion drive. Thank you for joining us. Please extend a warm welcome to our eminent panel.
Hello and welcome. India is seeing a lot of action in the payments market. Banks, fintech, and the enabling regulation has made India one of the hottest markets for payments in the world. Welcome to the conversation today on the Economic Times. MasterCard presents the future of digital payment, safe and secure. So we'll talk about that issue in great detail. We all have been part of the payments revolution in the country, and you can feel that, you can experience that in your everyday transactions and in your behavior, in the economic behavior. The ad jingles tell you about the payment opportunities. Some of the RBI messaging is being taken home by popular cricketers. You may have noticed them as well. Besides that, India is one of the markets where regulation has been conservative, but keeping a close eye on global developments. So let me give you a broad picture of some of the issues that could be raised during the conversation today. These are just broad issues. And of course, I must mention that the detailing of these and maybe some other issues will be done by the experts who join us today. First, let's talk about the small businesses which have been hit hard in recent years. First, it was the demonetization, remember, November 2016. And then what happened then was liquidity or cash was sucked out of the system. And then after COVID, a large number of small businesses have been shut down. Going digital in their operations has been one of the opportunities that has helped them survive and live through in the post-pandemic world. Second, digital payments. The opportunities have expanded manifold in recent years with a mobile in every hand. Anytime and anywhere payments have become a reality. Third, the security has been a constant challenge for during this post-pandemic world over the last 2 years. That cyber attacks and ransomware have been a constant challenge for the financial services as well as other industries. You would have had supply chain and manufacturing, a whole lot of other industries which have been hit. Fourth, and this is a macro reality that all businesses are very carefully they're monitoring. With the limitations of going out and spending out, the money that people have, that has been slightly stymied. A section of the consumers have flush with funds. Why I say a section of the consumers? Because these are the people who continue to have a source of earning during this period. A lot of that opportunity is now showing up in the digital forms of spending. So some of these issues we could be talking about. Here are the experts. Let me introduce you to them. Mr. Amitabh Khandelwal, General Manager, Payment and Settlement Systems at RBI. Mr. Shashank Kumar, Co-founder and CTO at Razorpay. Mr. Prashant Sinha, Senior Vice President, Cards and Payments at Axis Bank. Mr. Mihir Gandhi, Payments Transformation Leader at PwC India. And Mr. Aditya Murthy, Vice President, Digital Partnerships, South Asia at MasterCard. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking out the time. Welcome to the Economic Times, and thank you for being with us for this so important discussion. First, let me request Mihir Gandhi to set the context for the conversation and talk about the entire landscape. Mihir, it's over to you.
So if you look at how the digital payment story has evolved in India, we've been fortunate to be part of the story since 2008-9, when NPCI was set up with a mandate to promote retail digital payments in India. And since then, there have been a lot of innovations, a lot of new payment rails that have come up in India, which has led to the accelerated growth of digital payments for the citizens and consumers in India.
Mhm.
So today, as we stand, we have come a long way, almost 11, 12 years. We have 10 plus payment rails on the retail side, largely, a few on the corporate wholesale side. We have, in the last 4 to 5 years, the growth has accelerated for retail digital payments. And this is at 55% CAGR is what we have been seeing, largely due to different factors, which I will talk about. We have approximately 200 to 250 million active users, largely on mobile as well as internet and physical channels, which use digital payment modes today in India. What we predict is the UPI, which is one of the flagship payment rails of India. We are seeing a 4x growth, a projected growth in the next 4 to 5 years from where we are today. And overall digital payment transactions were at 40 billion in terms of volume in FY21. Again, this is expected to grow at an accelerated pace. So, what are the factors that are leading to the growth of digital payments in India? First is change in the consumer behavior. One, both the demographics of the consumers have changed with a lot of millennials and Gen Zs coming into the picture, and they are more open to use mobile as the key form factor to do their day-to-day transactions. Also, there is a growing trust in digital payments because of different initiatives and efforts of both the regulators as well as the operators in the ecosystem. And there is convenience and ease of use with UPI and other payment channels coming in the system. The second key factor is government is promoting digital payments. So there have been different policy initiatives push both at the central government level and at the regulator, which has led to the growth of digital payment usage. Access to mobile devices and internet is a key factor that has helped to accelerate this growth, and entry of new players in the payments ecosystem, including the fintechs, big techs, etc., have really opened up new innovations and avenues to use digital payments. Some of the challenges, Ashu, you did mention about it earlier. I think security is one of the key concerns, and we will continue to see that, and there will be a lot of efforts to mitigate the risk. From a revenue stream perspective, there is, been very, very, zero MDR has led to a lot of challenges, especially on the UPI side, and we are seeing wafer thin margins today. From an investment perspective, to cater to the large scale transaction volumes, there is a requirement to invest more to kind of ensure that the customer convenience and usage is not hampered and they are given a seamless way to transact. And lack of financial literacy still exists in different pockets in India, and a lot of efforts are being put in that area to ensure that we have a lot of people educated, aware, and able to use digital payments to further accelerate this growth. So if you look at the projections, how we see the market going forward, today we are at around 40 billion transactions from a digital payment perspective, which is FY21. In the next 4 to 5 years, we see a 4x growth in the overall market. This will largely be because of the growth will come largely from accelerated usage of the faster payment rail in India, which is UPI. Today, UPI share in the overall transaction volume split is 55%, just over half. We expect that to be more than two-thirds going forward in the next 4 to 5 years because of the convenience and ease of faster payments that has been seen in India. Similarly, form factors like cards, NETC, AEPS, etc., will also be contributors to the growth going forward, and they will further lead that revolution in digital payments. From a payment mode perspective, what some of the new things that we are seeing today? If you look at the right hand side, which is 2021 and beyond, we are seeing few of the new payment innovations happening in spaces like offline payments, which is where you don't have internet connectivity and you still allow the transaction to go through. You have buy now, pay later, which is now come in as an additional adjacency to digital payments using the data and the transactions on digital payments. You also have, overlay services. You have recently we've announced the digital rupee, which is the central bank digital currency. All of these are going to further add to the innovations, to the excitement, and to the potential use cases in digital payments in India. If we look at the various ecosystem entities in the industry, how they are working together. So at the very heart of it is the regulator and the government, which are taking a lot of efforts defining the framework, the boundaries of how digital payments in India can operate. These includes the like of RBI, NPCI, and few other entities at the central ministry space. We have the card schemes, Mastercard, Visa, NPCI, etc., which play a key role in ensuring that digital payments and innovations are being taken care of. Banks are a key player which offer these instruments to their customers. We have payment system issuers which have come up, the likes of Vita, Slice, etc., which have seen a good traction in the space. We have technology service providers. They could be payment aggregators, payment gateways. They could be the PSPs, etc. So we have Razorpay, PayU, etc., which are doing pretty well in this space. And we also have the fintechs and the big techs, the likes of Amazon Pay, Google Pay, etc., which are also contributing in this space. So all in all, this has been a very, very varied market with different kind of ecosystem players in the space today, and we further expect this to continue going forward. So this was a brief overview or snapshot of digital payments. Thanks, Ashu, and back to you.
So that's an interesting landscape that exists. Thanks for that update, Mihir. And let's first try and get a regulator's view and get Amitabh to talk about how this, while this is we have a good platform ready, how can we multiply from here? And one of those things, it's a pretty large thing to say, financial literacy, something that Mihir referred to as well, Amitabh. But along with effective regulation, how could that help multiply this market?
Thanks, Ashok. Um, well, if we can really pinpoint the specific, what you say, very specifically that, okay, these are the checkbox, we have to complete it. And then the thing will be very easy. But I don't, there is a straight answer to this, because ultimately it's a combination of many of the features. Now, like we were talking earlier about the mobile revolution and access to mobile, and our millennial population who are very techno savvy, and how it has helped in developing our digital payment market. So those are the things, like the demography that we have. That is something that is not in our control. We are lucky enough to have such a favorable demography. So ultimately, what comes down to is how to balance various factors. The factors, as you are telling, awareness is one factor, because ultimately awareness is not confined only to bringing those people onto digital payment landscape, but also retaining them there, so that they have very good positive experience, which can help them to continue with this digital payment option being exercised. So that is one thing. The second thing is that, as Meher was telling, that we have quite a, as he was quoting about 10 rails, this wide variety, wide array of payment systems that we have. We have to continue with that, and still we cannot say that now this is the entire ecosystem. These are the options that are sufficient, and now we need not innovate. That is simply not possible. Yeah, it is now clocking more than 50% of transactions today. Then reason is that in some point in 2016 we came up with innovation, and that has proved to be very beneficial for the country. Similarly, CBDC, like we were talking of CBDC, that can be one innovation. There can be not only now these are, I'm talking from adding more payment systems, and then so that it can cater to the needs of various strata of the society. But with this, we cannot ignore the existing payment systems. We have to fine tune them. We have to add more facilities. We have to adapt to the changing scenarios. And this is where, from regulator point of view, we always come up with a vision document. It gives a 3-year pathway that, okay, these are the things that we are going to do. so that the industry can also align with those things. And ultimately, having a payment system or having some changes in the payment system, that is not an easy job. It's not plug and play. That simply come up with something and then it is like, okay, now from day one, these all things are there. So you require some gestation period to develop the system, understand the requirements, develop system, and then do testing and all those things, and then only you can come up with it. So what we are doing is that on our part, we are giving a 3-year forward guidance that, okay, these are the things that we plan to do. And this 3-year plan is developed based on the inputs that we receive from the industry. It's not that we sit here and decide it. We take feedback, we hold meetings, and then we decide on what are the requirements. So we have to be agile. And having said this 3-year thing, the vision that we are telling, it's not cast in the cast in the iron that, okay, we will do this only. We are open to either drop it or add to some other things depending on the requirements at that moment of time. So we have to be as an industry. Means here I will consider all the industry participants, the government and the regulator together. We entirely form the industry. We have to talk, we have to discuss, we have to see what is required, and then we have to be nimble-footed so that we can adjust, adapt, and then cater to the requirement of the society.
Okay, that's very interesting because some of that we are seeing that nimble-footedness that you mentioned, are seeing it from the industry. Let's get Prashant into the conversation. Prashant, the ecosystem entities, how can they work closely together? Something that Amitabh referred to when he mentioned about the positive experience, I'd imagine. How can the merchants and payment service providers ensure that positive experience so that people or the merchants and consumers who are at the fringes, they can add to the transactions and of course become part so that the absolute pie grows?
Yeah, thanks, Ashutosh. So I think, my take is pretty simple, that at the end of the day, it boils down to consumer choice, right? And the choice here is not only a commercial one, but experience driven and, with guardrails of security. And, we can't restrict this to, specifically cards or UPI, P2M payments, right? I think in India, the challenge is that how do you deepen the payments, right? How do you proliferate the payments? How do you take it to, the nooks and corners of the country, right? Which essentially means that, there is a steady state large segment of users which are using cards, UPI. You bring more and more people onto them. So some of the new, as Mitab also highlighted in terms of newer facilities, right? So offline payments is one. UPI, and what does UPI do more and more for mobile commerce, right? Or e-commerce, right? And the most important part here is that as more and more consumers take to mobile, take to, let's say, their laptops and desktops, and use their card or use their bank accounts to through UPI, I think the most important factor here would be the experience on their security, right? Because a lot of people may not be very, very familiar with using mobile per se. So they are still getting used to, using a smartphone, let's say, right? So if we can provide a secure solution, a frictionless solution at the same time, I know a lot of times we think of security and payment journey friction as a trade-off, right? But that's not the right way. I think firmly embedded security measures in the transactions. The payment journeys can be, seamless. Case in point being, let's say what tokenization does to e-commerce, as and when the 1st July comes and we see the fully expanded avatar of tokenization, right? Or some of the other, we've seen network innovations, for example, like Visa SafeClick, or Mastercard is also coming up with a couple of innovations where, let's say, there is no two-factor authentication for small little payments. So I think it's the user journey experience, the entire transaction experience. Breakdowns should be less, should be minimal. In fact, they should not be there, and it should be secure experience for the customer. And more importantly, I think once more and more people get used to it, I think the whole idea of customer having a voice and having a redressal in terms of any issues faced by the customer, I think these three key elements will define as to how we proliferate this and we grow this.
Okay, Shashank, in terms of the way fintechs have been spreading and making use of this opportunity, one would, it's one, can I also say it this way, that the low-hanging fruit has been addressed. Now, how can fintechs, how can these companies help take the market deeper and get a larger, help grow the pie as well?
Thanks, Ashutosh. I'll tell you one interesting piece of history. When we started Razorpay in 2015, a lot of people actually called out to us that you already have a lot of incumbents, and digital payments is happening through various providers in the country, right? So we are actually pretty late to the game. And that was the impression back in 2015, right? When we still didn't have digital onboarding or geo moment that had happened, right? And the fact is that the digital payments industry has been growing significantly year on year since then, right? And even today, I don't think we have plucked all the low-hanging fruits, so to speak, literally, right? We are making constant progress in terms of technology, in terms of regulations, in terms of opening up new markets, new use cases, right? When we started the company, 2015, 2016, we were mostly seeing a lot of tech companies or digital SMEs or tech startups taking advantage of digital payments, right? With first with demonetization happening, a lot more businesses, traditional companies got into digital payments and started looking at their infrastructure from new eyes, right? Then with pandemic happening, we have seen tremendous number of small businesses, right, and traditional businesses flocking to digital payments because their traditional supply chain got disrupted, their traditional way of doing business got disrupted, right? And we have been helping them onboard and come onto the leveraging internet, right? But even now, and this is just in last 1 year, right? Every 3 businesses that we onboard with respect to digital payments, 2 of them are completely new and first-time user, right? They might be paying digitally, but accepting payments digitally is completely new, and we have to help them understand how to go about it. What are the nuances? How do refunds happen? How to handle disputes and chargebacks, right? How do money get settled to them, right? So while we keep talking about these terms day in, day out, right, and obviously all of us in the industry and the regulator, all of us understand the significance of these things, right? Most of the businesses and customers are still very new to digital payments, and we are seeing increasing adoption from tier 3 cities and other beyond rural areas, right? With different kinds of with QR code technology coming in, with UPI coming in and creating significant disruption. But I would still say that a large number of use cases are still offline, are still cash heavy. And what we have proven is that, yes, you can use digital payments and technology in this world, and you can take those use cases online, right? But that has still not spread to a majority of the country, right? So we are still in that expansion mode. We are still taking that to every single business, every single customer, and helping them understand how it will help reduce their operational cost, how it will help increase their efficiency, right? How it will help open up the market for them in terms of that, you're not just limited to your neighborhood, right? But you're actually have a big country, a big market at your disposal, and here are the right tools for you to see how you can expand further, right? So I think as an industry, be fintech players or payment providers or the various ERPs, CRMs, right? All of us come together to create that proof points, right? To create that ecosystem, which is helping a lot of unorganized sectors or unorganized markets, slowly getting into the formal economy, and also for all the traditional firms to gravitate towards digital payments.
Okay, Aditya, there's a very popular line in one of the movies, I can't remember which one, which says, "Picture abhi baki hai." but would you say that picture abhi shuru hi hui hai? Kyunki, see, if you look at the revolution customer experiences, and we did refer, a little while earlier to the onboarding process and some of the other experiences of customers, how that can be better, how that can be improved. Ultimately, the pie has to grow. How would MasterCard see that?
You hit the nail on the head when you say picture abhi baki hai, because to my mind this is a magnum opus that is in the making, and this is because of a confluence of many factors. There's a lot of effort that different parts of the ecosystem have done, and not just the payment ecosystem, lots of ecosystems. You've got the people who've set up the fantastic digital infrastructure in our country, the folks who've done internet, there's the government who's been progressively looking at things coming ahead, there is the regulator who's been progressive in a completely different way. We tend to look at the current. What we actually have to appreciate is that we're at that inflection point where all of this, whatever is going to dominate for the next 10 or 15 years, the base is getting settled now. You're at that base moment right now. So whenever I tend to feel very strongly that, we probably are a little harsh to ourselves, but we should also look at it like this, that India as a country is very different from the rest of the world. We've adopted the internet and access the internet through mobile telephony and not through laptops and desktops, which is a completely different experience. So therefore, our scaling on mobile devices and internet devices is at a pace which is very different. Much as we may want to educate people and things like that, all of these stories, small things coming together are forming the base that I see today, which is going to form 5 years from now. If you had looked at one of Mihir's slides, he talked of 40 billion transactions going to 186 billion transactions, if I remember the numbers correctly. If you actually look 5 years back, it is actually a fivefold increase. It is going to be a fivefold increase, and I dare say it is going to be a fivefold increase ahead of that as well. So I think there is a complete new story happening here. As far as the experiences are concerned, I think it's very important. Mr. Khandelwal had mentioned that it's very important to test and bring forth new technology in a safe manner. And once you bring forth that technology in a safe manner, you have to scale it consistently. You need people to consistently use and scale a technology. It's not that you drop off an old technology. Think of it as a bouquet of multiple technologies which are providing services, and all of it directed at maybe disincentivizing the use of cash. If I were to call that out as a core goal here, I think all in all, there is going to be a benefit, and multiple strata of our ecosystem and multiple strata of our society is going to benefit. We just have to be a little patient. All of these things, all these great changes that the magnum opus, abhi picture baki bhi nahi, abhi picture shuru bhi nahi. You're going to see that 5 years from now.
Okay, picture shuru bhi nahi. Now that's another take for the whole thing. So again, that gives a new spin. And look at that, since you referred to those numbers that Mihir mentioned, from 40 billion to about 186 billion, look at the absolute number that grows and the change that it helps bring about. So some of that will also have to be done by the industry and the players by joining hands together as well.
Sure, without doubt. I'll give you a very interesting example. Shashank was talking about onboarding, onboarding retailers, and 2 out of 3 are new, and he has to tell them using digital payments is fine, but acceptance is a totally different ball game. Getting people to use every aspect of it is very important. And I think there's great merit there. You see, India's retail is growing from 700 billion to $1 trillion over the next 3 to 5 years. Our e-commerce, and not just platform e-commerce, all forms of e-commerce, which is largely marketplace driven, again impacting the SME space, impacting small retailers, impacting tier 3 and 4, is probably at $50-60 billion today, going to $100 billion. And I dare say some people are projecting it to even cross in the realms of $150 to $200 billion in the next 5 to 6 years. If that were to happen, digital payments will be front and center, one. Number two, wide use of large number of technologies will happen. adoption of all forms have to happen. And therefore, I feel this whole benefit that will be spread around has to be powered by multiple people. Today, Shashank is doing a great job. There are lots of other people doing different things. I think all the innovation that all of them are bringing about is going to power this significant growth that we are wanting to see.
Okay, so let me ask Prashant this then. Prashant, Shashank referred to that most of the use cases are offline. As a bank, and I'm sure you're looking to enter into beyond the just the larger cities and get into the smaller ones and to the unpenetrated markets. How can the digital experiences be changed and made easier for that first-time user? What are some of those things that the bank and the industry is doing?
Yeah, good question. So, in fact, I was about to add to this, right? So I'll just continue from where I had left earlier.
Mhm.
I think to people who are, let's say, just thereabout on, let's say, mobile payments or digital payments, or who are totally, away from it at the moment, I think onboarding and the onboarding experience for them, how do they get started? If I keep it simple, right, and not use some technical terms, how do you get started? How do you make that first transaction, right? Whether it is the new offline mode of payment or it is actually the good old, UPI, which is growing leaps and bounds, right? How do you get started and how do you feel secure at the same time, right? I think that really holds the key, because if you actually see a parallel example, that another thing which India and large parts of India covering tier 3, tier 4 is doing is making videos, making reels, and and they are making making, I think, millions and millions of it, right? And it's not only concentrated in Mumbai or Delhi or or Kolkata, right, or Bangalore. You go to the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, perhaps in some villages, right? Or let's take, some socioeconomic strata of living in the metros, which is not that well to do, I think, but everyone is hooked on it, right? Why? The reason is very simple, right? It's very easy to get started, right? Whether it's secure or not, I'm no one to comment on that. That's a totally different subject, right? But yeah, I'm sure the guardrails exist there as well. So I think for me, the key is, how do you get started? What's your first experience, right? So and a lot of positive movements happened on that, right? I think the way we verify, authenticate, or do or KYC a customer today, I think that's changed if we look at where we were 5 years, 10 years back, and the vision also that the regulator has, and some of the overall the government plus regulator provisions that have come, right? And they've made it easy, right? As a bank, of course, access is not restricted to the the tier 1 or tier 2 cities. We are looking at all options, and that's why when we look at payments, we don't restrict it to credit cards or debit cards, right? And debit cards, when I say, I'm not even restricting it to the Jan Dhan Yojana debit cards. I'm talking of UPI. I'm talking of merchant acquiring. I'm talking of going to every tier 3 and tier 4 cities, right? And making it easier. But yeah, for a consumer, I think it's the experience part, and of course, because it's to do with money, right? And when people start, not everyone has the luxury of a credit limit or a small limit, so it's their own money. So I think the security part, again, at the cost of repetition, right? I think that if I may use the word, it's the moat, right? It's the moat when we are thinking of a very strong defense, right? Because that's the launch pad, that's the bedrock to when you want to move fast.
Okay, Amitabh, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just to add what Prashant was telling, that definitely the customer onboarding experience is very important, but that takes care only of one part. Now, bringing the customer and then retaining it there, that is also very important, because the fact is that once the experience goes bad, the customer stop using that particular payment system. Because just imagine a situation that someone has budgeted for 15,000 rupees for last 1 year to buy a mobile phone, and that transaction goes bust, and okay, definitely it will come back. But you just think of the mental condition of that customer. He would say that it was better that I would have done cash transaction. So we have to take care of those strata where who are budgeting for them even 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 rupees. That is important, and they have tied up to a particular transaction. So customer onboarding is definitely important, but then enhancing the customer experience, their grievance redressal, that is also important to retain them in the on the payment system. Second thing is that we cannot be complacent even with established payment systems like UPI is doing well. You will not find anyone telling that UPI is not doing well. There are deficiencies in that, but we have to upgrade that system also. We have to think that whether VPA at the rate with alpha numeric options, is it better, or can we think of having only numeric VPA? Or means, despite the best system that we are having, there is always a scope of improvement. So that we have to continue doing it.
Okay, so another element to that point, very well taken. So let me try and ask Shashank then about, another element which is so important. If businesses adopt more or adopt it widely, the options for digital payments, how can the industry players there, Shashank, work together so that cash can be minimized with these businesses itself? How can it expand for the SMEs and the MSMEs? They're going through a lot of stress post-COVID for these times for them.
I think it's a great question, and we have been dealing with this problem for last few years, right? So what we have seen for the typical behavior for any consumer, right? Once they have done few transactions with a specific business, right, they are more comfortable to moving to digital, right? So the initial few transactions for any customer is usually cash on delivery because they don't know whether the business is genuine or not, right, or what kind of reputation it has, right? And after a certain level, then they are more comfortable moving to digital transactions, right? I'll tell you two things that we have found needs to be amplified as much as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
First is trust. Creating trust at different levels of digital payments is extremely important, right? So one is at the payments infrastructure level, right? Because what happens in payments, you have multiple intermediaries, right, who for whatever historical reason or always talk very less via technology between each other, right? I mean, it takes a long time to mature the technology and to open up the protocols and everything. So whenever that payment chain breaks, then you have refund issues and settlement issues and all those kind of things. And all of us are trying to improve it, but the fact of the matter is to this day that there's still a lot of improvement that needs to happen. Right? So that is first. Then second is at a product level. You see a lot of businesses and customers need the right kind of products to transact digitally, right? And I think on that front, we have made a lot of progress, right? With UPI, which is more of a payment instrument innovation. And then at a more as a company, right, we have built products around payment links, social payments, helping businesses create their own, branded spaces and whatnot, right? So various kind of payment products, so that they're not just restricted to, accepting payments via a mobile app or a website, right? Today, almost, I think close to our 30-40% of our payments happen outside of a website or an app. And I think that is truly important because not every business has the capability to kind of do that, right? So that's the second part. I think the third part that is really important is, on the trust factor, right, is how do you establish the genuineness of a business? Okay, because as you open up digital payments more and more, and that has to happen, right? And there are always going to be bad actors in the system who would want to exploit it and who would want to give a very bad experience to the end consumers. Okay, so if you think about it, one thing that the likes of Flipkart or Amazon or other the big marketplaces have done well is to establish that trust really well, right? Because they have their brand reputation and they have their mechanism to manage that. But at the end of the day, you need to equally enable the small players as well as the big players that are there, right? So today I can go to a shop and I can, I can see that person, and that physical look, that physical meeting establishes a certain amount of trust, right? Now, how do you take millions of those businesses, right, and allow them to be on the internet without just going through the likes of Flipkart and Amazon, because there you don't have your direct customers or your own brand, right? But how do you take that bazaar, offline bazaar that are present in cities and villages across India, and put them on the internet, and without that physical meeting create the same level of trust? And this is a really hard problem, right? And we have been working on this since last few years. Today now a lot of consumers have started trusting Razorpay as a brand, that okay, like the checks that Razorpay does, if I see Razorpay present with any merchant, then it's possible that the gateway has done certain due diligence there, right? And but see, at the end of the day, like it's going to be an extremely hard problem, right? I don't have like something that okay, this is going to get solved in a month or 2 months, right? But over the next few years, we have to crack it, because we'll see a lot more businesses coming online, and we would want that from day one, transaction one, the customer can come and start trusting these businesses and start saying that yes, I know I can trust, I know they will deliver the goods, I know they will provide the right service, and I have the proper grievance addressable mechanisms as well in case that doesn't happen, right? So these are the 3 layers of trust that really need to be established to make this happen.
Okay, but Aditya, I'll just come to you. I think Mihir also raised a hand. Mihir, if you can go first, and then I go to Aditya.
Sure. Thanks. So I was just drawing on the same point, which we were discussing earlier, which even Amitabh said, where from a customer perspective, right, getting the customer in and then making him do transactions, having the effective dispute resolution mechanism, etc., is very important. But what is also important parallelly is the awareness and the education. I think today, even Shashank alluded to that point where he said that, how do I make a customer aware that he or she can use this platform or this payment rail, and just do a transaction and it will go through, right? So I think that awareness is the first step, and then once he or she is aware, then the person can come in, and the trust, the repetitive behavior established, and that can further lead to increase in number of digital transactions and use cases. Secondly, on the merchant side, what Shashank was saying, I completely agree with what he said on the trust side. We also need to look at it from a merchant perspective. What are his or her pain points, right, today as a SME or as a small business? The first pain point is a working capital, right? So how do I manage my cash flows? How do I manage my working capital? And whether there is some solution, because I don't have any formal records, banking records. How can I get a credit or a loan, or that? So I think that is one area which one can think about and give some weightage to. The second is what Shashank said they are already doing is converting the physical stores to a digital store, and the pandemic has accelerated that, where we are saying that how can I, a mom and pop kirana store in a rural area, I don't know what is internet, I don't know what is a computer, how can I put my goods online, or allow some of the customers who want to transact online. Forget the rural locations. I'm talking about a location in Mumbai where there was one physical store who's a restaurant, and they did not have a website. They never used to accept digital payments. And when I used to go there, I used to suggest to them last 4-5 years, why are you not accepting a card? Why are you not accepting a mobile wallet? And I used to tell the owners and the people over there. They said, no, we don't believe in that. And the pandemic actually forced them to go digital, to create their mobile app, to start accepting digital payments. And now everything is accepted over there. So I mean, just that one thing of helping them to solve their pain points. In the pandemic, they didn't have any physical business. They had to go online. They could do deliveries. So I think those are the things where one needs to catch the pulse of these SMEs, be it at a rural area or even at a metro or urban area. So those were a few points that I wanted to bring in.
So it's very interesting. You've brought up the SMEs. We'll talk about that, but let's go to Aditya. Aditya, you wanted to make a point, but I just wanted to add, We spoke about picture abhi baki hai or picture abhi shuru bhi nahi hui. But there's another one I wanted to add to that. For a typical small somebody who's looking to trust a new business because the trust issue was raised, they may have watched that movie called Jamtara. That does send you shivers down your spine occasionally when you get a call like that. How does that trust come in? And of course, you want to make your point as well, please.
So, this is a test match, okay, on an extremely bouncy pitch. And you have a very difficult bowler bowling. So you have to be patient, you have to be consistent, and you have to respect the circumstances that you are in. Having said that, I'd like to give you a very interesting parallel. Take, one of the panelists, I think Shashank, said that you need to have products, and these are really hard to do. Building trust takes a little time. So trust takes time, but for that you need products, you need investment, you need consistency in your message, you need consistency in delivery. So for example, e-commerce would have gone to 99% of the pin codes in the country, but just the fact that we could deliver at 99% of the pin codes in the country, it doesn't mean that e-commerce will start happening. So therefore, there was a need to do cash on delivery. There was a need to tell people that, hey, order here. You don't have to go to the next city to go buy your goods or buy your books, etc. Start here. Start with the smallest. There was a need to incentivize, mechanisms for getting people onto this thing and telling them, hey, you can pay after you get it. You can also return the product if you don't like it. Now, these mechanisms, they take a little time. Now, as you know, in India, you have marketplace commerce. So you also have an aspect of, on one side, you've got a small merchant who's trying to get onto the platform and trying to sell a product. On the other side, you have a customer who's skeptical about the merchant. Having ratings for both and being able to validate behavior on both certainly augurs well. But it's very easy for a platform. Why? Because one of the e-commerce vendors is because you have data on both sides. And you have the customers coming to you and you have the merchant coming to you, and there is a level that you can play. But here, what you're trying to do in payments is much larger. This is creating an open system. Everything is open, and you need to be able to validate a merchant, and you also need to be able to validate a user, which is not easy because you don't have access to all data points on all sides. Having said that, in the example that I was giving, you will find you have a merchant and a consumer. That merchant who was struggling to get on, sometime after a few years, that same merchant has multiple B2B e-commerce vendors targeting him, and he's got more than one e-commerce vendor. That he's a target of multiple vendors now. So in short, you have to be consistent. You have to have a product. You have to deliver. That calls for investment. It calls for consistency over a period of time. There are no shortcuts to that, and that is our reality. That's piece one. Piece number two is that once people start seeing the convenience, there is a tipping point for every service. Merchants, at the end of the day, people start seeing convenience. If people see safety, people see convenience, there will be the early adopters, there will be the late adopters, but there is a tipping point. And when that tipping point happens, there is large scale adoption that happens. And therefore, you will see sort of a sudden spike in adoption. And this has happened in e-commerce. And I dare say you can see the next one happening in social commerce as well. It has just started, but you will see this happening in social commerce. And to that extent, taking different people of different strata of society and attempting to provide them services which they can access more conveniently, of which payment interface is one of them, sort of evens out the game. What will happen is they may not do e-commerce, but they may use a government service. And that paying for a government service, paying for tax, paying for records, paying for something else, paying for your ration, something will trigger this behavioral change. And suddenly you will have the gap reducing between behaviors exhibited in top cities and behaviors exhibited elsewhere, where people will start preferring to use the digital mechanism. The idea is that, the digital divide also reduces over a period of time as digital payments empowers everybody to do the right thing. It's not necessary to partake in commerce, but partake in the best of government services itself. So I think this way, to stuff that Shashank was saying and to stuff that Mr. Amitabh was mentioning, I think some of these gaps, will go away over a period of time. And to do away with all of these, you need innovation around use cases, around people coming and telling you that what additionally you can do with this. And that's where I think the entire startup ecosystem comes in, creating new solutions, new solves for new problems, and driving that convenience which drives adoption.
Okay, Amitabh, in terms of the change that is expected in different parts of the country, can you share some detail of how that is shaping up that leaves the regulator in a position to say that, okay, I can move on and take the next step where, a neck or a bigger segment of the users can be part of this revolution?
What we can get from the discussion till now. If you see, we always feel like picture अभी बाकी है या picture कभी शुरू नहीं हुई है. Okay. And if we asked a similar question 5 years back, okay, means I'm talking in terms of number of transactions and all those things. I think response would have been same कि अभी तो बहुत कुछ बाकी है. Okay. Today also we are saying same thing, and tomorrow maybe 5 years down the line also, when we will reach as per Mihir 186 billion mark, then also we will say that अभी तो बहुत कुछ होना है. Okay, so
Optimism.
it's definitely, we cannot say that okay, we have reached this level and now we have to elevate to next level. Okay, now even if Shashank was telling that we have still not plucked the low hanging fruits, so that is not actually the scenario. The thing is that we have increased our stature to such an extent. Now those which were high at 5 years before or 5 years before, they were like not on low hanging or high hanging fruits. Now we are telling that they are low hanging fruits. So it's not that means continuously, even after 5 years, we will find certain low hanging fruits. They might be looking distance as a distant dream as of now. So this is a continuous evaluation. It means to answer your question that okay, now we have reached this level and now we have to go to level 2. That I think we don't have any such a leveling. It is like continuously we have to engage ourselves, we have to develop ourselves, new opportunities will come, and we have to make our system so robust that, and also to increase the reach of our system, that we fulfill the requirements of the society. So I don't think that we can anyway say that okay, now this has been achieved, now this is the next target. It's always moving target.
Point taken. Moving target. That's important because then you're constantly re-looking at the situation and trying to act accordingly with regulation, or even the market players will be acting accordingly. So let's move on to some of the other issues more current with the industry, and one of them is the challenge, if I may use the word challenge, or rather the step towards tokenization and what it has meant for the industry. So, Mihir, how has the industry settled into the new regulation for tokenization, and vis-a-vis the security part of it, how has the entire ecosystem evolved, so to say, now that we're going to be, what the RBI said, it's going to be soon in place?
So I think, firstly, the entire concept is a step in the right direction, where we are saying that we need to ensure security of customer card details and other information. There have been different cases earlier where a lot of this information has been compromised, and it doesn't augur well for the industry as well as the participant that has happened to. From that perspective, a lot of banks, a lot of ecosystem players, a lot of card schemes are taking the effort to move in that step. A lot of progress has already been achieved. Some of my colleagues here, Shashank, Aditya, all of them have solutions in place that can enable this for merchants as well as for banks. And that's a great kind of adoption which we are seeing. What is of concern is that some of the international merchants, specifically the OTTs, they are saying that they will still take some time, or they may not be able to adopt it fully in time, and that actually leads to spoiling the customer experience, where the customer actually has to either keep some money in the wallet, or they have to enter their card details or net banking details every time they want to make the recurring payment transaction. So I think that is something which we will have to look at and see how we can solve that. But I think some of the early adoptions by players like Razorpay, BillDesk, card schemes are a step in the right direction, and that should be further encouraged. Banks are also doing a fantastic job, and trying to get all hands on deck to have this ready by the timelines. Fortunately, we were given that extension by the regulators, and hopefully we should be ready in time, barring for a few much except for a few merchants that may not be ready.
Yeah. Aditya, would you like to add something to that in terms of, because we spoke of the experiences earlier as well?
So I think one has to have the larger picture in mind, and some of these changes, um, as difficult as they may appear initially, frankly, I think with the likes of all our partners, Razorpay, BillDesk, etc., I think the recurring payments, I think, has more or less been shot. Yes, there are the troubling issues around international acquiring, etc. But you have to see the larger picture and the larger scheme of things. I think this is just par for the course. It's going to be a time factor. And I think maybe a month, 2 months from now, I think these problems will go away. So that's piece one. Piece number two, on tokenization at a totally separate level. I think when we all recognize that digital payments is growing significantly, the one fundamental thing, the silver bullet in all of this, is only safety and security. That is fundamental to trust. So I think to that extent, I think we have, irrespective of how difficult it might be, because it is an ecosystem level change, all parts of the ecosystem have to adopt and make changes. And therefore, to that extent, there will be some initial challenges which everybody faces, but that would happen for anything, right? If there will be that initial challenge, and when you see greater safety or the tokens replacing the card credentials, and the incrementality of such effects going over the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, I think it is significant. The second aspect is that, we must also not just look at one line item. We must also recognize that tokenization has, from device tokenization, has become card on file tokenization or merchant tokenization, as said somewhere. This also has a far-reaching effect, because now it's not limited to a device. It's gone to, it's a step for the future, because it is not just your smartphone, your desktop, and your laptop. It is also all IoT devices. Now think of it 10 years from today. You'll have everything in your home IoT enabled. Your cars will have IoT. There'll be so many things that will have payment technologies. If you don't create base infrastructure and base systems now, I think when significant scale will happen, making change there will be even tougher. The third aspect is safety, security against, as our size is growing, bad actors will also find this will also come. There is the aspect of fraud, there is the aspect of phishing, there is the aspect of malware. So all of these have to be protected against. And, in our past conversation, you would have seen that, the rising theme across all of us has been that, development has to be brought for everybody. So in that sense, safety also has to be brought for everybody. And you can't break people's spirit. And therefore, this tokenization, the incrementality of tokenization is great levels of protection. And I think it has to be welcomed. I think it's a progressive step, irrespective of how difficult it might be. We all will happen. The problem statements, I repeat, I think with the increased time limit that we've all got till June end, I think most of these problems will go away.
Wonderful. Shashank, when your teams speak to some of the smaller merchants, some of the worries they have around security and some of the worries around, the trust factor coming out of that, how do you explain this challenge around tokenization, that change that is happening? Are you actually able to explain it to a tier 4 merchant or something like that?
I think it's difficult, for them to understand the nuances around tokenization and card details and card number, right? Because for a small business, at the end of the day, they are concerned that they should be able to get their payment through, right? And not deal with the complexity of the whole massive engine running behind that, right? And that's the reason, perhaps, that they come to the banks and players like us, that we can give them a simplified platform. So we deal with a freelancer or a small business in in a far off city, right, like Darbhanga or Samastipur or whatever, right? So we deal with startups, right? We deal with large businesses like like the public companies, right? And a conversation with all of them, it has to be different. It has to be more nuanced, right? The large businesses are always on top of some of these changes, and always looking to figure out how they can benefit from it, and how they can minimize disruption, so to speak, right? And I think they have very loud voice as well, right? But I think for most of the small businesses, they don't have so much of a loud voice, and that's the reality. They don't have so many champions as well. Like we all talk about solving problems for small businesses, but you would be hard pressed to find how many of them actually come out on the other side and talk about like the real problems that they actually face, right? So I think the industry will go through on the tokenization front. There's no doubt about it. We have, thankfully there's, I definitely like to acknowledge that, there's enough conversation with the regulator and, the industry bodies, networks, and, merchants and everyone. And a lot of to and fro and the feedback, and, I think the acceptance that yes, 31st December would have been a tough deadline, right? But also at the same time, the extension is significant and generous enough that the industry and most of the industry bodies will get over the line by that time, right? But I still think that it's for most of the small businesses, it's going to be a transition that they're still not fully aware of, right? And if you look at it objectively, it's not a fully level playing field right now for most of them, because again, the trust associated with a large business is significantly more, right? So you can tokenize, any consumer will be a lot more willing to, allow their card to be tokenized. First of all, look, a consumer doesn't understand exactly like, what tokenization means, right? So that awareness will increase over time, right? But they're always willing to, save their card or tokenize their card with large businesses, right? But with most of the small businesses, that same level of trust doesn't come automatically, So what most likely is going to happen is that most of these businesses will see customers entering their card details again and again on every repeat transaction, and some level of conversion drop off, and that's going to be a bit of a reality that will be there for some time, right? I think we are trying to mitigate it as much as possible, trying to figure out, solutions for it as well, that will work and that will mitigate some of the impact that is there. There's absolutely no doubt that, the overall, if you look at it from an end consumer perspective, an overall high level picture, that, this is definitely a step in the right direction, right? And moving the ecosystem to a place where you don't need to rely on, raw card numbers anymore, right? But there, while that is going to be the case, I think the solution definitely needs further evolution to look at some of the edge cases and some of the impact that is going to come.
Prashant, in terms of what you're hearing from customers, some of the challenges given the new situation for tokenization, how are you explaining it to the consumers, and particularly, as I mentioned, to the smaller towns? And what Shashank mentioned about some of the drop-offs, are you also hearing that from consumers and the merchants who will be part of this entire exercise?
So Ashu, firstly, tokenization, my quick take, is a step in the right direction. I think it's a much needed change that we need to embrace. It has got a much needed extension. I think that solves a lot of pain points, if not all, right? We were concerned about a long tail of merchants. I'm sure there'll still be a minority set which will be severely impacted. But I think that's part and parcel of every change, right? See, at the moment, I don't think tokenized transactions have really taken off, right? card tokenization that has started, I think it has gathered good pace, good progress. Because when we look at numbers, and it's just been a month or so by now, if I'm not wrong, 45 days from the time we were fully ready across all networks. I think there's good progress in terms of tokens getting created. There will always be a challenge that tokenization, one has to always think of not one card is equal to one token. It's basically one card if used at 5 different online places, then for that one card there have to be 5 tokens. If there are 3 cards in your pocket, then 15, right? So given that, the scale is mammoth, right? But there are encouraging signs. As far as consumer concerns or pain points, we haven't heard, honestly, in terms of drop-offs or difficulty, because see, one of the things is that the consent for a token to get created, right, is most of the times is in flight. So you're doing a transaction, right, and the consent is embedded there, right? And once the token is created, you are still not using that because you're not seeing. When you still go, let's say 31st January, and which was supposed to be the earlier deadline, and let's say 15th February, right? Your payment page view is still the same, right? So you're not using those. My sense is the kind of prep that we've done, the kind of prep that we've seen from the networks, right? Because at the moment we are talking of network solutions. I frankly don't see latency. I don't see drop-offs coming because of tokenization. Mm-hmm. Because quite frankly, once you tokenize the card and you start using the token instead of the actual card number, there's nothing really that changes instead of a couple of data elements that come and hit my server, right? So that way, I think at the moment, there's a fair bit of confidence that this will go well.
Okay, Aditya, you wanted to come in.
One mechanism of measuring this is that, so there is the preparedness aspect. Prashant talked about it and Shashank talked about it, and that's a fact. This is a big change. It's an ecosystem-wide change. It's going to take a little time. Having said that, credentials getting tokenized, this one card, 5 merchants, or 3 cards, 15 merchants, and therefore a combination and that token. I think that's going to be interesting because what's going to happen is that closer to the deadline, or today you can't see it, probably you'll see scaling of card credentials getting tokenized because the consent seeking process is on right now. When you're giving complete control to the customer to be able to see, to be able to accept, delete, do whatever he wants with his token, it also starts with this consent, and therefore it might appear like an entry barrier right now, and therefore the numbers might be smaller. But my feeling is that after the deadline, so 1 month preceding the deadline, you'll see significant scale, and 1 month after the deadline, once merchant, this consent seeking consent process is over and stabilized, and customers get used to the, just giving the consent once, and after that for them the experience is the same. I think the volumes will start recovering. So merchants aren't going away. Merchants are going to be doing the same businesses. You're going to be using the same applications. You're going to be using the same, online merchants. Nothing's going to change there. But because there is this Uber drive to create so much of transparency and trust in the system, there is the seeking the consent from converting your credential into a token, and that post being capable and ready in all respects will take a little time, but I think that that will be breached very, very quickly is my feeling. So 1 month before and 1 month after the deadline is something that we shouldn't see. I think just after that, you will see that things will recover is my feeling.
Amitabh, last words about because we spoke about this trust and also the security element to it. How is the regulator seeing the next few years panning out? If you could give a broad picture for the industry and for the viewers.
Like I was quoting in one of our earlier question, that it's definitely an ongoing process. It's always a work in progress, and we will have to do it. There is no second opinion about it. So you can you have to expand the horizon. You have to expand your awareness related campaigns. You have to make digital payment systems more safe and secure. Like even if I talk of this particular aspect of tokenization, there is a common point here in discussion that it's a very safety and security is paramount, and this is a step in the right direction. So, but if you see that uh, there might be like the people who are going onto the field, they are struggling with creating awareness about it, telling the merchant that what are the benefits and how it will go about. But what is the problem? Main problem is the headlines that is being created. Okay, if you see the newspapers, the media reports, and all those, it's portraying as if everything is going to end. Now, if the merchant is not on tokenization, then he will not be able to transact. He will lose the customers. But actually, that is not the fact. There is guest checkout. There is the option wherein the customer can check, key in the details, and he can very well do the transaction.
Sure.
Also, the aspect as far as non-playing field or to the small merchant vis-a-vis the bigger merchant, I don't think that is the case, because the reason is that if the customer is comfortable with giving clear card data to the small merchant, why he will bother about tokenized card data? So it's the issue of creating awareness and going. We can do many things to enhance the safety and security of the system going forward also, as you are telling that going forward what can be done. So we have to continue doing it, but awareness is the key. We have to ensure that the right things percolates to the end users. And like even for this particular tokenization thing, why we are considering that it's only for the card holder? It's a protection measure to the merchants also. There will be, there are, as you are telling, cyber attacks, the ransomwares and all those things. It will continue to be, it is not going to go down. It will increase with times as we open ourselves to digital payments. Now, by asking merchant not to store those card details, we are making them also safe. And our ecosystem is getting into, through these things, it will get into a scenario where even for card present transaction, the merchant will not require card data to be stored with it. We can very well come to a situation where, except for issuer and card holder, no one requires card data. If they don't require it, why they will store it? So it's a thing of portraying things in the right direction and creating awareness about things, and that will be the guiding thing for coming years also. We have to develop our system as well as create awareness.
You wanted to come in? Sorry, I seem to have missed. If you raised your hand, please.
No, I hadn't raised my hand, but I agree with what Amitabh said on the awareness. I think that is very important, and as I mentioned earlier, that will be required to ensure that consumers, customers like you and me know what are the key steps to do when they're actually doing that one-time process of registering their card once and converting that into a token.
Okay, so just about, I think, time that we've completely run out of time. Aditya, last words. Would you like to closing remarks? Please go ahead.
I think first, at the end of all of this, I think we just have to realize that we are part of something very, very large. There is great innovation. There's a progressive regulator. There's a progressive government which is supporting digital payments change. It augurs well for everybody, and we should look at the larger picture and not look at the small challenges that come. As much as we might see, as much as that might trouble us in the short term, I think the larger picture is great for the country, and I think that's something we should all celebrate. The fact that India is leading in digital payments is something that we should all be very, very proud of. And I think from a MasterCard standpoint, we tremendously support disincentivizing cash and promoting all forms of digital payment. And to that extent, I thank everybody here, who's really partnered and in making all of this happen. Thank you very much from MasterCard, and thank you very much to each of you individually as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Aditya. Just, since we spoke of Bollywood and we spoke a little bit about names of Bollywood and spoke a little bit about cricket, I'm just reminded a little bit about how the changes happened when mobile phone took over our lives in the post-1990s, in the decade after that. So the term they used often, and the term to use the value-added services was ABC. That included astrology, Bollywood and cricket. So that Bollywood and cricket, I guess, is where India really is. So the message is, I would imagine, picture abhi baki hai, and this is a long form, there's a test match. Thank you everyone for taking out the time for this conversation. Thanks indeed for your time.